I'm Adam Fletcher, and for more than 30 years, I've been talking about youth engagement in communities. However, I don't think everybody's heard the message because all around the world, young people are more disengaged than ever before. We've just come out of this terrible time of the pandemic that's relied on people staying at home and becoming more and more disconnected. We need to face the reality that youth engagement is the only way to save us from the miserable conditions that we're in. Youth engagement sounds like an innocuous enough topic, but do we really understand what it is? When you ask a psychologist what youth engagement is, they'll talk about that mental connection, that intellectual connection that young people will form to the world around them. When you ask a mental health counselor what youth engagement is, they'll talk about that emotional connection and that ability for young people to socialize in the world around them. When you talk about business, when you talk to business owners about youth engagement, they talk about consuming and the ability of young people to be effective customers. Youth engagement is all of those things, but it's so much more. I define youth engagement as anything that young people choose again and again. That easy. It doesn't rely on a psychologist's opinion or a teacher's opinion because young people's engagement doesn't rely on adult approval. Instead, youth engagement is anything that youth choose again and again. That means that young people can be engaged in bad things. They can be engaged in sex, drugs, and rock and roll. They can be engaged in racing their car up and down the street or graffitiing on the side of the building downtown. However, they can also become engaged in changing the world in positive and powerful ways. And what we're seeing today more than ever is a generation of young people who are stepping up to be engaged in these new ways that are dynamic, fascinating, and very, very hopeful. That engagement is where my work lies, in the possibility that we can understand youth engagement in new ways. With more than 100 years of youth engagement practice, we have a lot of research and a lot of different opportunities to draw the lessons from youth engagement. We've learned that youth engagement is contingent on 5 simple activities. I call these the cycle of engagement, whether that's listening to young people, validating young people's opinion, authorizing them to take action, taking action, reflecting on what they've learned. Young people are doing all of these different things to really step forward and choose the same things again and again, but in positive and powerful ways. We can all do this by learning how to plan for youth engagement with intention instead of by coincidence. A lot of businesses have already learned this lesson. That's why we have more effective tech sales to young people than ever before, whether that's a great device, a wonderful app, the latest website, or the newest music that's coming out. It all contends, it all hinges on youth engagement in those things. Businesses have figured it out. Governments are trying to figure it out because they realize more than ever before that the youth vote matters in ways that we didn't understand before. But from the 1970s forward in the United States, the youth vote has actually been an essential tool for a lot of politicians, particularly in the election of Barack Obama, the election of Donald Trump, and other elections happening on the local and state level across the country. The same thing plays out in international politics. Of course, a lot more in countries where they have higher percentages of young people under the ages of 18, 25, 32. But youth engagement can happen on purpose instead of coincidence. And that's what these businesses and that's what these governments are showing us. Nonprofit organizations can build youth engagement into their operation, into their programming, into their administration to ensure that what they do is effective rather than coincidental. Families can build youth engagement into the home. Parents can build youth engagement into the home to ensure that their own children are meaningfully involved in their own lives. Schools can build youth engagement into the operation and procedure of the school in not just the everyday classroom sense, but actually in the administration of education at the building level, at the district level, at the state level, and even at the federal level and beyond. Government agencies can do the same thing with local towns, villages, and cities all across the United States and around the world, involving young people in so many different ways to foster their engagement, to make them choose to become civically engaged over and over. Now, that brings an important point because it helps us to understand, wait, youth engagement isn't just about buying stuff. It's not just about learning things. Youth engagement is actually about life. It turns out, through my research for the last 7 years through the Freechild Institute for Youth Engagement, I found that youth engagement happens in 7 main domains throughout every young person's life. One of those domains is economic engagement, helping young people to choose to be economically engaged, whether that's through saving or earning money or investing or spending money. It's learning how to do that on purpose. And that's what youth engagement is about. It's cultural engagement. The second domain is cultural engagement. That's learning about the places that we come from and the people who we belong to, as well as the environment and the feeling and the sensation of being engaged. Another form of engagement is civic engagement, our actual political systems and the democratic systems that we rely on every single day, helping young people to learn to choose those on purpose. Different from that is community engagement, the people who we are surrounded by, but also the activities that bring us together as communities, whether that's our neighborhood or our faith community or in many other ways. Another form of engagement I like to call personal engagement. Personal engagement is learning to choose the things inside of us that we choose again and again on purpose. So instead of being the passive recipients of other people injecting things into our mental system, into our emotional systems, into our physical selves, we actually choose them on purpose and learn to do that with intent. There are so many other domains of engagement as well. When we take time and help young people foster this sense of engagement, we'll find the transformative power of our communities, of our lives, and of ourselves in so many new ways. Maybe the most important part, though, of the whole picture is beginning to understand youth engagement as a sustained process, because youth engagement is the beginning of our lives, starting with the youngest kids in pre-K all the way through graduation into college and beyond. We can foster this choice making with intention, and then imagine who we have surrounding us in our communities as our neighbors, as fellow voters, as people who are civically, culturally, socially, economically, and so many other ways involved and engaged all of the time. These engaged lifestyles then last our entire lifespan, with youth engagement as a stepping stone and understanding that we can really transform the world through youth engagement. What we've come to believe, what we've come to understand with this youth engagement is that this is the hope for democracy. This is the hope for community, that by learning to choose again and again on purpose, young people can lead our country, lead our world into a new space that we've never imagined before. The good news is they're going to do it whether or not we want them to. That's what we've learned from Greta. That's what we've learned from Malala. That's what we've learned from so many young people who've stepped forward, not just recently, by the way, but let's go back to the civil rights movement and the kids who marched in Birmingham, or let's go back to the United States Revolution and the kids who manned the flagging signals up on the cliffs when they saw the English ships come. The examples go way back in history. What's different today that's never existed before is that we have the technology, we have the capacity, and we have the desire to spread youth engagement around the world in countless ways. Youth engagement is our greatest hope, and that's a little bit about it.